The dragon arrived in a cargo crate. Not because anyone put her there. She had climbed in herself, somewhere between the transit dock and the main corridor, and when the station crew slid the crate door open, they found a small golden creature pressed flat against the back wall, wings folded tight, eyes wide and watching. Her name was Sora. She was young, barely past the early growth stage, which meant she was roughly the size of a large dog, with scales the color of old gold and pearl mixed together. Her wings were still soft at the edges. Her claws had not hardened fully. She looked, in that moment, less like a diplomat from the Draconic Conclave and more like something that had gotten very lost. Galactic Outpost Helix 7 was not a warm place. It was a working station, long gray corridors, equipment bays, the constant low hum of recycled air and power running through the walls. It orbited a gas giant called Surith, which was enormous and violet and covered in storms. You could see the storms through every outer viewport. They were always there, moving slow and massive and full of light. Liaison Oru was the one who found her in the crate. He was a Pulhari, forearmed and patient, assigned to make Sora feel welcome. He opened the crate door gently and crouched down and said her name in the soft tone used for frightened things. Sora did not come out right away. She looked at the corridor. She looked at Oru. She looked at the nearest viewport, where Surith turned slowly below, and she pressed herself a little flatter against the crate wall. Oru waited. After a few minutes she walked out. She held her head level and her steps were deliberate, the way someone walks when they are trying to look like they were not just hiding. She followed Oru down the corridor without saying anything. The crew members they passed nodded or stepped aside. None of them quite knew what to do with a dragon either. The station felt her before it saw her, in a sense. The environmental systems registered a new biological presence. The crew logs updated. Commander Drail, who ran the station with the focused efficiency of someone who had managed 17 different species and preferred them all to be predictable, looked at the update on his screen and made a note to schedule a briefing. He did not get to the briefing. The storm came first. It built fast. The sensors caught it rising from Surith lower atmosphere and had maybe 4 minutes of warning before it peaked. A Class 5 event, which was not the biggest kind, but was far from small. The corridor lights flickered once. Then the lightning came, a long lateral strike across the face of the gas giant, visible through every outer viewport on the station at once. A wall of white fire that lasted 3 full seconds before it folded back into the clouds. The thunder did not travel through space, but the station was built in orbit, and the electromagnetic surge conducted through the hull in a way that was not quite sound and not quite feeling. More like the whole structure taking a slow breath inward and then releasing it, a vibration that started in the floor and moved upward through everything. Sora was in the common room with Oru when it happened. She was gone before the vibration finished. Not through a door. Under a console, the long equipment housing along the far wall that had a narrow gap at the bottom, enough for a small dragon to press herself flat into. She was there in the time it took Oru to turn around. Her wings were folded completely. Her scales pulled tight. Her tail curled around her own body. Oru said something gentle. It did not help. 2 Vothani crew members appeared in the doorway. They looked at the console. They looked at each other. One of them went to get Commander Drail. Drail arrived, assessed the situation, and stood with his arms folded and all 3 pairs of eyes doing the slow sequential blink that meant he was thinking hard about something he had not prepared for. He considered the standard protocols for distressed diplomatic personnel. None of them covered dragons under consoles. That was when Calder walked in. He was human, the only human on Helix 7, a field technician who worked in xenobiology and had been on the station long enough that the crew had stopped finding him unusual. He came into the common room, looked at the gap under the console, looked at the 2 Vothani in the doorway, looked at Drail. Then he sat down on the floor. Not next to Sora, not in front of her, just in the open space of the room, cross-legged, at a comfortable distance, as if sitting on the floor of the common room was a perfectly normal thing to do. He rested his arms on his knees. He looked at the viewport, not at the console. He did not say anything. He did not move toward her. He did not explain. He started humming. Very low, no particular tune, just a rhythm with no shape to it. Drail stared at him. Oru tilted 2 of his 4 heads. The Vothani crew members looked at each other again. Under the console, Sora watched the human sit on the floor and hum at nothing. The storm outside faded. The hull settled. The lights steadied. Sora stayed under the console for 11 more minutes. Calder stayed on the floor for all of them. He did not rush. He did not check his screen. He sat and hummed and looked at the viewport and was simply there. When she finally came out, low and slow, moving carefully, she did not go to him. She went straight to the viewport and looked at Suruth below, now quiet again, just turning in its amber and violet colors. She stood there for a long moment. Then she said, without turning, "Why did you sit on the floor?" "It seemed like the right height," he said. She thought about that for a long time. It was not the answer she expected. It was not trying to fix anything or explain anything. It was just a fact, plain and simple, and somehow that was stranger than anything else that had happened to her since she arrived. She went to her quarters and lay awake listening to the station hum. She thought about the human on the floor. She did not understand him yet, but she wanted to. 3 days after Sora arrived, the sensors picked up the next storm. It showed up on the long-range red as a slow-building event, a wide electromagnetic system rising from the deep layers of Suruth, the kind that took its time before it peaked. The station had maybe 6 hours before it hit full strength. Drail called a meeting. Just 3 of them. Himself, Calder, and Oru. He stood at the front of the small briefing room with his arms crossed and the careful expression he used when he had already made a decision but was willing to hear 2 minutes of argument first. "The standard approach," Drail said, "is to move her to an interior room. No viewports. Lower sensory input. She stays there until the event passes." Calder nodded slowly. "That will work for this storm." "Yes." "And the one after. And the one after that." He paused. "And in about 3 months, she will still be hiding in interior rooms every time Suruth does anything. And the Conclave will ask us what we have done to help her, and we will have to say, 'We moved her to a room with no windows.'" Drail's third pair of eyes blinked out of time with the others, which meant he was listening seriously and did not want anyone to know it. "You have a different idea. I want to take her to the observation deck." The silence in the room lasted several seconds. Oru leaned forward across the table. "You want to bring her closer to it." "I want to show her how to count it," Calder said. "There is a method, old, very simple, something humans teach children during thunderstorms. You watch for the lightning flash, and then you count the seconds until you feel the sound or the vibration. Each second is distance. 300 kilometers per second in atmosphere, further in a magnetosphere like this one. If you count to 5, the strike was far away. If you count to 10, it is even further. You are not guessing anymore. You have a number, a real distance." Oru sat back. "You are using arithmetic to treat fear." "I am using understanding," Calder said. "Fear of something huge and loud is usually fear of something unknown. It has no shape you can hold in your head, so your head makes it bigger than it is. Give it a shape, give it a number, and it becomes smaller. Not safe, not gone, just smaller, measurable." Drail was quiet. His eyes all blinked at normal pace now, which was harder to read. "And you believe this will work on a dragon?" "I believe it works on anything that is capable of counting. It is a risk." "Yes," Calder said. He did not argue around that. "It is. She could have a bad reaction. The storm could be worse than predicted. I could be wrong about all of it." He looked at Drail steadily. "But hiding her in a room teaches her that the storm is something to be hidden from. And she will carry that lesson a long time." Drail gave permission. With conditions, Oru would be present, Sora could leave whenever she chose, and Calder would stop immediately if she showed real distress. Calder agreed without any debate. He found Sora in the common room 2 hours before the storm peaked. She was sitting in the exact center of the room, away from every viewport. Reading something on a tablet, she was not really reading. Her tail was wound tight around her own feet. "I want to show you something," he said. She looked up. "What kind of something?" "A way of counting." "Counting what?" "The storm." Her wings shifted slightly, not open, just adjusted, the way they moved when she was paying close attention. "You want me to go toward it. I want you to watch it from behind glass and count the seconds. That is all. You can leave the moment you want to leave." She looked at him for a long moment. He did not push. He stood in the doorway and waited, the way he had sat on the floor and waited, present but not pressing. "Once," she said. "I will try once." The observation deck had a viewport that ran nearly the full length of the outer wall. Thick layered glass, built to filter the worst of what Surith produced, turning violent light into something that could be watched without damage. When they arrived, the storm was already building. Long coiling cloud formations in violet and deep amber, slow and enormous, dragging light across the surface of the gas giant in wide pale streaks. Sora stood in front of the glass, and her whole body pulled inward, wings tight, scales close, tail around her feet again. Then the first arc came, white and fast and wide, a bridge of lightning that crossed the lower face of the planet and vanished. Sora flinched hard. "Count," Calder said, quiet and steady. She breathed. "1," she said. Her voice was very small. "2. 3. The vibration reached them, not sound, just a long, slow shudder in the hull. Something felt more than heard. "3, Calder said. "Far away. Not here." "Not here," she repeated. It came out uncertain, like a question she was trying to make into a fact. "Another strike. Smaller." She pulled in a sharp breath and then counted before he could say anything. 1 Mississippi. She had found the phrase somewhere in the station database, the old human way of making each second count as 1 full second and not rush. It had stuck in her head. 2 Mississippi. 3 Mississippi. 4. The hull shuddered, faint and slow and distant. 4, she said. "Further than the last one." "Further than the last one," he said. They stayed for 40 minutes. She counted every strike. Her voice got a little steadier as the time passed. Not confident yet, not easy, but steadier. Oru sat behind them on one of the benches and did not say anything, which was the most useful thing he could have done. When they left, Sora walked the corridor in silence. Then she said, "That is a strange way to teach something." "It is just measurement," he said. "Measurement of something that could kill you." "Most useful measurements are," he said. She thought about that for the rest of the evening. She was still thinking about it when she fell asleep. Outside, Surith kept turning. Sora had found a list in the station archive. It was old, centuries old by human reckoning, a long catalog of storm names from Earth. Ordinary names, person names, names like you would give a neighbor or a child. Every entry was a hurricane, a cyclone, a typhoon, a thing that had once torn through coastlines and broken cities and drowned ships, and every one of them had been given a name as though it were simply someone who had visited and caused trouble. She brought the list to the xenobiology bay. Calder worked in there most afternoons, cataloging atmospheric samples from Surith. The bay was a long, narrow room with equipment cases along both walls and a particular kind of organized mess that only happened when one person had worked alone in a space for years. Sora had started coming in without being invited. He had never told her to leave. She set the tablet on the edge of his workbench. "You name the things that could kill you," she said. He glanced at the list. "Hurricanes." "Yes." "Why?" He set down his sample tool. "Practically, to tell them apart. You need to warn people. This storm, not that storm. Names are faster than coordinates." He paused. "But I think it started older than that. If something is enormous and destructive and you cannot stop it, naming it makes it smaller. Makes it a thing you can talk about. A thing that can be understood instead of just feared." Sora looked at the list for a moment. "That is a very human idea. Most humans would not disagree." "Are you afraid of things?" she asked. He was quiet, the particular quiet of someone deciding to be honest rather than comfortable. "Open water," he said. "When I was young. The ocean. Deep water where you cannot see the bottom." She tilted her head. "You would drown." "The fear makes sense." "The drowning part was not the fear," he said. "It was not knowing what was below me. Something enormous, invisible, right there. And I had no shape for it in my head. So my head made the shape as large as it could imagine." He picked up his work tool again. "I learned to swim eventually. Someone showed me how water actually works. Why a body floats. How currents move. The physics of it." He glanced at her. "Once I understood the shape of it, the idea of something enormous underneath was still big. Still real. But not a monster anymore." Sora sat with that for a while. She was good at sitting with things. Calder had noticed this about her. Dragons did not rush their thinking. They went quiet and processed in long, slow stretches, and when they came back, they said something exact. "Dragons do not do it this way," she said finally. "When we are afraid, tradition says you face the thing. You fight it or you endure it. You come back marked by it. and that is how you grow. What if you cannot fight a storm? Then you endure it. And come back marked. She looked at the viewport. There was no storm outside right now, just Surith turning, ordinary and enormous. I have been enduring storms my whole life. Coming back marked. It has not helped. How long have you been afraid of thunder? He asked. Since I was very small. Before I have clear memories. She pulled her wings slightly closer. My clutch siblings were not afraid. I do not know why. Did anyone ever sit with you through one? She thought about it. No. The approach was, remove me from the situation. Wait until the event ended. Return me when it was safe. She paused. It was kind. They were being kind. I know, Calder said. But it did not work. No, he agreed. It usually does not. She was quiet again. Then, in the careful way she asked things that mattered to her. Why did you sit on the floor? That first day. You did not know me. You had no reason to stay. Calder thought about it. You were scared and alone in a new place, and I did not have anything more important to do. That is not a reason. That is just a description. Maybe. He turned back to his samples. I have a younger sister. She was afraid of the dark when we were children, badly afraid. The kind where she could not sleep if any part of the room was unlit. Our parents tried everything. Night lights. Explanations. Telling her there was nothing there. He sorted a sample into its case. None of it worked. What worked was when I started sleeping on the floor of her room during bad nights. Not every night. Just the bad ones. I did not do anything. I was just there. Did it stop? Sora asked. The fear. Slowly. Over about a year. She is not afraid of the dark anymore. He paused. She says she does not even remember being afraid. But I think she does. I think she just does not have to think about it much. Sora looked at him for a long moment. You are trying to be like that for me. I am trying, he said simply. I do not know if it will work. She did not say anything for a while. She watched him sort samples. The ventilation hummed. The station kept its steady lone note under everything. Then, tell me more about the ocean. What it feels like to understand something you used to be afraid of. He set the sample case aside. He turned toward her. He told her. They stayed in the xenobiology bay until the evening shift changed, and neither of them noticed the time going. Nobody on Helix 7 had seen a Class 9 before. The records showed 3 of them in the last decade, but none of the current crew had been stationed here for any of those. They knew it existed as a category, a number on a scale, the way you can know a word in another language without knowing what it tastes like. They found out what it tasted like at 0340 station time. The sensors woke everyone with a low priority alert 6 hours before it hit. A Class 9 electromagnetic event rising from Surith deep layers, building wide and fast. The station was structurally safe. Helix 7 was built for this. The engineers who designed it had assumed Surith would be difficult, and they had been thorough. The hull would hold. The systems would hold. But Class 9 meant the outer sensors would go partly dark. It meant power running in rolling fluctuations that made the lights stutter. It meant the hull not just vibrating but singing. A low continuous resonance that started in the floor and lived in your teeth for hours. And it meant the viewports. In a Class 9, the lightning did not come in individual strikes. It came in sustained arcs, long, burning columns that held for seconds at a time before collapsing and rebuilding somewhere else. The face of Surith became a constant shifting wall of white light, enormous and close looking through the filtered glass, filling every outer viewport on the station from edge to edge. Drail ran maintenance drills. The Vothani crew responded well to having work. It gave their hands something and their minds something, and they moved through the drills with focused efficiency while the hull vibrated around them. Oru went to the interior sensory quiet room with tea and a stack of research files and the patient stillness of a species that had survived many things by simply waiting. Calder went to find Sora. She was not in her quarters. She was not in the common room. She was not in the xenobiology bay. He found her on the observation deck. She had come alone. She was sitting directly in front of the main viewport, forepaws flat on the glass, watching the storm. The light coming through shifted in slow waves, white to violet to white, and it painted the whole deck in moving color and made her golden scales look like they were burning from the inside. She was shaking. Not collapsing, not hiding, just a low persistent tremor that ran through her shoulders and the edges of her wings, the kind of shaking that comes not from cold, but from something held too tightly for too long. And she was counting. Her lips moved in the dim, shifting light. He could not hear the words over the hull resonance. The Class 9 had turned the whole station into a slow drumbeat, but he could read the rhythm. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. She had not heard him come in. He crossed the deck quietly and sat down beside her. Same as always, not too close, just beside. She noticed. She glanced sideways for 1 second and then looked back at the viewport. You came, she said. You were here, he said. She did not answer. Her lips kept moving. The storm outside built toward its peak. Surith was doing something that had no good name. A sequence of simultaneous discharges that overlapped and stacked until the entire visible surface of the planet was a single sustained blaze of white. The viewport's filtering systems pushed to their limit. The light that came through was still enormous, still pressing, still the kind of thing that filled the eyes and left no room for anything else. The hull sang, low and deep and everywhere. Sora's wings snapped half open, a reflex, pure body, nothing chosen. And then she pressed her forepaws harder against the glass, and she said, out loud, clearly, 1 Mississippi. Her voice did not shake. 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6. The hull resonance peaked and rolled and began to fade. 6, she said. It is far away. Far away, Calder said. She let out a long breath. It came out as fire. Pale golden fire, slow and involuntary, the kind that dragon bodies produce under extreme emotional release. Not anger, not aggression, just the physical result of something held tightly for too long finally being let go. It lasted 1 second. It lit the observation deck in warm amber light that was nothing like the violent white outside, and then it faded. Sora stared at the air in front of her where the fire had been. I did not plan to do that, she said. I know, Calder said. Among dragons, she stopped. Tried again. That is what we call a letting go breath. It happens when you have been holding something very tightly and you release it. What were you holding? He asked. She was quiet for a long time. Long enough that 2 more arcs of lightning crossed the face of Surith, and she counted both of them, automatic and steady, before she answered. I have been afraid of being afraid, she said. Not just the thunder. The hiding. The way I press myself flat, and cannot think, and cannot speak. I have been carrying that. The shame of it. Longer than I have been carrying the fear of storms. She paused. Tonight I thought, I will go to the deck. I will count. Even if I run, at least I will have started. You did not run, he said. No. She looked at her own forepaws on the glass. I stayed. That is enough, he said. She looked at him. Her amber eyes were very clear in the shifting light. Is it enough? Really? He looked back at her. It is more than enough for tonight, he said. Tonight is not the end. Tonight is just tonight. She thought about that. Then she turned back to the viewport and watched the last of the storm, and she counted every strike left in it, and her voice was steady the whole way through. When it finally passed and Surith settled back into its ordinary turning, she sat back from the glass and folded her wings and was quiet. Same time tomorrow, she said. Calder almost smiled. There might not be a storm tomorrow. Then we watch the quiet, she said. That is good practice too. They walked back through the corridor together and neither of them said anything else. And it was the best kind of silence, the kind that does not need filling. Word got out. It always did on a small station. Helix 7 had 43 crew members and no secrets that lasted more than a week. By the morning after the Class 9, everyone knew that the young dragon had gone to the observation deck alone and stayed through the whole event. By midday, everyone knew a human had sat beside her while she counted. By evening, Oru had received a formal query from the Draconic Conclave asking for a written report on the welfare and adjustment of their diplomatic charge. He wrote it carefully. He described the Class 9 event and its intensity. He described Sora remaining at the station and functioning through the peak of it. He described the counting method in plain terms, seconds to distance, distance to measurement, measurement to understanding. He wrote it the way someone writes a thing they know will be read by people much older and more powerful than themselves, which meant he was exact and thorough and very careful not to make it sound like an experiment. In a footnote, he noted that the technique had been taught to Sora by the station's xenobiology field technician, who was human. He sent it. The response from the conclave came in 36 hours, which was fast for the conclave. They were not known for speed. They were known for thinking long and saying little and waiting until they were certain, which often took a very long time. 36 hours meant they were interested. Drayle called Calder to the command corridor and showed him the message. It was short. The conclave requested a direct communication with the human field technician at his earliest convenience. A senior representative would be available at the following times. Drayle read it to himself twice before looking up. A senior representative, he said. Contacting you directly. I see that, Calder said. This is not normal. I figured. Do you understand what this means? In conclave protocol, a senior representative communicating directly with a non-dragon, non-officer, non-diplomatic. I will take the call, Calder said. Drayle opened his mouth. Closed it. Yes, he said. You will. The call came through 2 days later on the station, main secure channel. Drayle was in the room. He had required this, for the record, and Calder had not argued. Oru was there too, quiet in the corner with a notepad. The image that filled the comm screen was large, because dragons did not translate well into standard frames. The representative was old. Not old the way a person looks old, but old the way a stone looks old, like it has simply been present for so long that it has become part of the landscape. His scales were deep bronze. His eyes were slow and very steady. He gave his name, which translated into something close to the one who has counted many seasons. Then he looked at Calder with the kind of attention very old creatures give to things they did not expect. You are the human, he said. Calder said. Yes. You taught our young one to count lightning. She taught herself, Calder said. I showed her the method. She did the rest. The elder was quiet for a moment. Explain the method to me, as you would explain it to someone who has never used it. Calder did. He kept it plain and simple. The gap between light and vibration, seconds into distance, distance into a number into something the mind could hold. He said that fear of something enormous was usually fear of something shapeless, and that once you gave the thing a shape, a real measurement, a real distance, it stopped being able to fill the whole sky in your imagination. It was still big. It was still real, but it had edges. The elder listened without moving. When Calder finished, there was a silence that lasted long enough that Drayle shifted his weight once, carefully. You gave her the storm as something to study, the elder said. Yes. Rather than something to endure. Yes. Draconic tradition has 2 paths for fear, the elder said. You face the thing and overcome it, or you face the thing and survive it. Both paths require the fear to remain, to be the force you push against. He paused. You are describing a third path. The fear becomes unnecessary. It is replaced. Replaced by understanding, Calder said. Yes. Another silence. Where did you learn this? The elder asked. My grandmother, Calder said. When I was young, during a thunderstorm on Earth. She took me outside to a covered porch and we counted every strike until the storm passed. She was a scientist? A schoolteacher, Calder said. She taught small children. The silence this time was longer. Drayle's third pair of eyes blinked slowly. Oru had stopped writing. Humans are strange, the elder said finally. I have heard that, Calder said. It was not an insult. I know, Calder said. I have heard that part too. Something moved in the elder's expression, not quite a smile, because dragon faces did not work that way, but something in the same direction. We will have more questions for you. I hope you are willing to speak with us again. As many times as you need, Calder said. The call ended. Drayle stood in the quiet of the command corridor for a moment. Then he said, without looking at anyone, a schoolteacher. My grandmother, Calder said. She taught children not to be afraid of storms by counting them. Drayle said it slowly, like a translation he was still working out. And you carried that for how many years before using it on a dragon diplomat? About 30 years, Calder said. Drayle looked at him with all 3 pairs of eyes. I am going to have to revise a significant number of my assumptions about your species. Most people do, Calder said. Eventually. He went back to the xenobiology bay. Sora was already there, sitting on her usual perch, watching him come in. They called you, she said. Not a question. They did. What did you tell them? The truth, he said. That you did the hard part yourself. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked away, at the viewport, where Surith turned in its usual amber patience. "I want to go to the observation deck tonight," she said, "even if there is no storm." "Then we go," he said. "To watch the quiet," she said. "I want to practice watching the quiet." He nodded. He sat down and picked up his work. Outside, the gas giant turned. 3 months passed. Sora grew. Not much in size. She was still small for a dragon, still translucent at the wing edges, but in other ways. She took up more room on the station. Not physically, just in the way she occupied a space. She had opinions about the food dispensary. She had a running argument with the atmospheric sensor array that she updated every 2 weeks. She had begun leaving things on Calder workbench. A crystal of Surith particulate matter she found interesting. A recording of a particularly good lightning sequence. A handwritten list of names she had decided to give to the 3 largest recurring storm formations above the gas giant. She had named the storms. She had not announced this. She had simply made the list and left it where he would find it. He found it. He put it in his workbench drawer without saying anything. She noticed. It was better than any response. What happened next, Calder did not teach her. He could not have. It was not a lesson. It was something she arrived at herself. There was a Vothani junior officer on the station named Roth who had worked maintenance shifts for 4 months and had, over that time, quietly arranged never to enter the narrow equipment crawlways. Nobody had pressed it. The work got redistributed. Roth was functional in every other way, and the station ran fine. But Sora noticed the way he moved around certain corridors, the slight rerouting, the particular way he stood near access panels without touching them. She spent a week just working near him, not asking anything. Then one morning she said, "What does it feel like when you have to go into small spaces?" Roth looked at her with all 6 eyes. "I manage." "That is not what I asked." He was quiet for a long time. Then he described it. The walls feeling like they were closer than they were, the air feeling thinner, the particular panic that was not about logic and did not respond to logic. "Does it have a shape?" Sora asked. "Can you measure the distance to the walls?" "Why would I measure the walls?" "Because if you can measure it," she said, "it is not a monster. It is a distance." She spent 2 weeks showing him how to measure. Not just the physical dimensions of the crawlways. She pulled the station engineering schematics, and they went through them together: airflow rates, structural tolerances, oxygen content at various points, the exact width and height of every access corridor on the station. She did not tell him not to be afraid. She showed him the shape of the thing until the thing had edges. 6 weeks after their conversation, Roth did a solo maintenance run in the narrowest crawlway on the station. He did not tell Sora directly. He left a small calibration tool on her console. She understood this was Vothani for something like thank you. She put it next to Calder drawer and thought about school teachers. There was a Polhari research assistant named Tiri who flinched every time the station announcement chime sounded. Not the emergency tones, just the soft 3-note signal that played before routine messages. It was small. Most people had not noticed. Sora noticed. She went to Tiri and said, "I want to understand how sound travels through pressurized hull material. Can you help me think through it?" Tiri looked up from his work. "Sound. How it moves. Why some sounds feel larger than they actually are." They talked for an hour. The physics of frequency and resonance. The way certain tones interacted with the body in ways that had nothing to do with volume and everything to do with pattern. The way old instincts responded to sounds before the thinking part of the brain could say, "This is just a chime. This is fine." Sora did not say anything about the announcement tone. She just built the shape of it. The next time the chimes sounded, Tiri counted the 3 notes instead of flinching. 1, 2, 3. He looked at Sora. She was already looking back at her work. Calder watched all of this from the edges. He did not say anything about it to Sora. He did not want to name it, in case naming it made her self-conscious about it. He just watched her move through the station, patient and unhurried, noticing the things people moved away from, asking the simple questions that turned out to be the important ones. She had not been taught to do this. She had just started doing it. Then a small storm came. A minor electromagnetic event, barely significant by Surith standards, the kind of thing the station logged automatically and the crew noticed as a slight flicker in the outer sensors. It came and it went in 40 minutes. Sora was at her console when it happened. She noted the sensor reading. She made a log entry. She went back to her work. Her lips moved, very quietly, For just a moment, Calder was at his own station across the room. He saw it. The rhythm was unmistakable. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3, and then it stopped, and she kept working, as if she had simply checked something and put it down. She did not look at the viewport. She did not stop what she was doing. She just counted softly, under her breath, and the storm was just a storm. Calder looked down at his own work. He did not say anything. He did not want to make a moment out of it. But he was smiling, and he let himself do that for a few seconds before he went back to his samples. That evening Sora found him in the xenobiology bay. She settled on her perch in the comfortable way that meant she was not going anywhere soon. They worked in the quiet for a while. Then she asked, "Did your grandmother know she was teaching you something that would last this long?" Calder thought about it. "I do not think she was thinking about that," he said. "I think she just saw a small child who was frightened, and she sat with him until he was less frightened. And the counting came from that." "The counting came from her," he said. "She made a game of it. She was good at making things into games." Sora was quiet. Then, was she afraid of things? He smiled, a small, private kind of smile. "She was afraid of flying," he said. "Spent her whole life afraid of it. Never got on a ship if she could help it." Sora looked at him. She was afraid of flying, and she never learned to count through it. "No," he said. "She never did." Sora sat with that for a moment. "That is sad." "A little," he said. "But she helped me. And now you are here." He went back to his work. Things travel in strange directions. Sora looked at the viewport. Outside, Surith turned in its slow amber light. A thin arc of lightning threaded through the upper cloud layer. Small, distant, nothing. Her lips moved. 1, 2, 3, 4. The hull barely shuddered. She smiled, small and private, just the faint curl of warmth at the corner of her mouth, and went back to her work. She was not afraid. She was counting. And that was enough.